which this sikha is dedicated to understand the difference between Yitzchak and Yishmael. I'm sorry, between Esau and Yishmael. We know Abraham has Yitzchak and he also has Yishmael. Yitzchak has Yaakov, he also has an Esau. And yet the Torah has a different classification for Yishmael than it does for Esau. The Torah calls Yishmael a non-Jew. The Torah calls Esau a renegade Jew. So the question is, what is exactly the difference between them? And the word Torah, everything the Torah actually happened. The Torah isn't a history book. It's not about history, but it's true. So everything the Torah says actually happened. But in addition to it actually happening, what Torah is, the word Torah means instruction. So we need to understand what is the message for us over here. So let's go on the PDF that I just sent you. Let's go from the top. Concerning the very first words of this Torah portion, and these are the children of Yitzchak, or more like these are the chronicles of Yitzchak. The Medrash comments and says the word ve'ela, these, is preceded by the letter vav, and these. And that means that the Torah is continuing in this Torah portion, describing something that began in the previous one. In the end of last week's Torah portion talks about the children of Yishmael. And now the Torah is continuing and saying, just like there were some people that were the offspring of Abraham, and they were not the nicest people, they were children of Yishmael, so too the Torah continues now and says that Yitzchak also had children. Told us means chronicles, told us means children. The Torah is going to tell us in this Torah portion the children of Yitzchak, but not all of them were as holy as him. Some of them were like the ones in the previous Torah portion, like Esau. Esau was like the children of Yishmael. And that's why the word toldos, which means children, is missing the letter Vav. Why is it missing the letter Vav? Because not all of his children were perfect. So these are his children minus one. These are his children who doesn't have all good children. He is someone who has children, but not all good children. The Torah describes his children with the word told us with missing the letter Vav. I just said it has letter Vav. The word ve'ela, the first word of the Torah portion, has an extra Vav. That means we're drawing a connection in this Torah portion, the one before. So the letter Vav in the beginning of the Torah portion is saying that Yishmael is just like Esau. This week's Torah portion talking about the children of Yitzchak has a similarity to children of Yishmael. The word children, toldos, is missing a vav, saying that Isaac's offspring were deficient. Esau was deficient. Esau wasn't the way he's supposed to be. Yesh lahavin, and therefore the Torah says the word told us missing letter Vav to say the true offspring of Isaac was only Yaakov. Not all the children of Isaac were considered children of Isaac. So among the children of Isaac, the one who is really called the child of Isaac is only Yaakov. Yaakov is not counted as part of the wicked people of the Torah portion before. Yaakov is in a different category, and he's not considered part of the deficient children of Yitzchak who are similar to Yishmael. So it comes out, according to this Medrash, when the Torah says these are the children of Isaac, who's the Torah talking about? Who are the children of Isaac? Who are the deficient children of Isaac? Who are the ones who are missing something? Esau. It's not talking about Yaakov at all. This verse is saying, we're going to tell you about the chronicles of Isaac, the children of Isaac. Who are the children of Isaac? Only Esau. Only Esau is similar to Yishmael. We're not talking about Yaakov. The question is, Aleph number 1. if the title of this Torah portion is children, and it only means the children only means Esau, where do we find in the Torah portion the story of Esau highlighted more than the story of Jacob? The Torah seems to give equal footage to both of their stories. So how come the Torah is saying this is only the story of Esau when it doesn't just tell us the story of Esau, it tells us the story of Yaakov as well? Where do we find this Torah portion, the Torah highlighting and saying this is, if you read this Torah portion, when you give your own title for it, you probably wouldn't call it Esau. You probably wouldn't call it Esau. You'd probably call it either Yaakov and Esau, whatever artistic title you would give, but it's about two brothers. So why does the Torah say this only the story of Esau, not the story of Yaakov? That's question number one. Base, question number two, Ve'ikr. How is it possible when the Torah is saying this statement, these are the children of Isaac, and take out his glory and take out his pride and take out the one he's proud of, Yaakov? How could it be the Torah does that? Yes, there is a child of his called Esau, but how can the Torah introduce the offspring of Isaac and not mention Yaakov? These are the children of Yitzchak. Yeah, who are his children? All he has is an Esau. They say a story about this Jewish mother, the first Jewish mother whose son became president of the United States. So the president calls up his mother, says, Mom, the inauguration is going to be on Wednesday. I want you to come over. How am I supposed to come? Am I supposed to get there? Mom, I'm the president. I'll send you a limo. A limo, shlimo. What are they going to serve over there? You know I only eat kosher. Mom, I'm the president. You're going to have whatever you want. You can have anything you like. You're going to have a fantastic kosher meal. All right, I'll come. She comes to the inauguration, and she's sitting next to all the dignitaries, and she says to the one sitting next to her, you see that guy down there? Yeah, I see the president of the United States. His brother is a doctor. So the question is, the Torah wants to tell us about the offspring of Isaac, and it tells us, you know who we have? We have our Uncle Esau. Uncle Esau, that's the offspring of Isaac. A chutzpah. What about Yaakov? What about our Zayda? How come he's not mentioned? As explanation of this, all this is, next second column, the theme of this Torah portion is Yitzchak. The real story of this Torah portion is not Yaakov or Esau, not his children. The main theme of this Torah portion is about Yitzchak, how Yitzchak dug the wells, how he traveled to Gerar, his blessings. It's about him. It's about what differentiates Yitzchak and highlights Yitzchak's value and how his service of Hashem surpasses that or is different than the service of Avraham. So since the point over here is to express the common denominator of this Torah portion, is to highlight what distinguishes Yitzchak from Avraham, so therefore the Torah continues in this theme and tells us that there's a difference between the offspring of Yitzchak and the offspring of Avraham. Where do you see this difference? You see this in the Esau Yishmael part of their families. Both of them had a child that didn't live up to what they would have wanted, but there's still a difference between them. So therefore, the Torah does describe Esau as a child of Yitzchak, and that's the main subject here, because in the production of an Esau versus production of Yishmael, you could see what distinguishes Yitzchak and how Yitzchak is different to Avraham. Does that make sense? Everyone follow? Yeah, you don't have time. The Torah wants to say what makes Yitzchak different to Avraham. What makes Yitzchak different to Avraham? Makes him different is that he has a Esau. The Torah is talking about Yitzchak. How can you tell how Yitzchak is different? in something that both he and Avram shared, yet his was different. It's similar to what the Rebbe talks about in other sichas about how you only notice the difference between a Jew and a Gentile in those things in which a Jew and a Gentile have a commonality, and those things that they are similar to. We learned the sicha once of the Rebbe about Torah says after the story of Purim, Jewish people have light and joy, gladness and honor. And the Medrash explains that those matters are referring to Yontif and Bris Milah. And the Rebbe says the reason those things are chosen, those specific things are chosen as our celebration is because we have something in common with Gentiles in those areas. And therefore Torah wants to say that's in the things which were the same, you could see how we're different. In the way that Avraham and Yitzchak are the same, they both have a child that doesn't live up to their standards. In that arena, we could see there what distinguishes Yitzchak from Avraham. That's why the Torah highlights the child of Yitzchak being Esau, because in Esau you could see how Isaac is different than Avraham. How so? Next page. In the difference between the relationship of Yishmael to Avram versus the relationship of Esau to Yitzchak, we find two opposing ideas, two diametrically opposed ideas. Number one, spiritually, it seems that Yishmael was a lot closer to Abraham spiritually. Kasher Masher Esau Yitzchak. Yishmael chazer b'shuv b'chai Yaviv. Yishmael does shuv in the life of his father. So Yishmael has a similarity to his father. He's a servant of his father, like Avraham. And why did he do tshuva? It's because of the influence of Avraham on him. On the other hand, Esav doesn't do tshuva. There's an amazing teaching of Vienes Neibeshitz. Vienes Neibeshitz was one of the greatest Torah scholars in his generation. Before his marriage, his father-in-law to be summoned him, and he said to him that he wants to test him, and he wants to see if he's worthy of marrying his daughter. He didn't know who he was testing. He was testing someone who could have tested him. But anyways, he tests him. They were apparently in a synagogue without any books. So he hands him a siddur, says, say a chiddush from the siddur. Tell me some insight from the siddur. So he opened up the siddur to the paragraph before Hodu. As Rabbi Shmuel says, he says, I have three questions. Who is Rabbi Yishmael? Why do Jews have someone named Yishmael? Number one. Number two, usually in the Talmud, there are two ways that Torah introduces someone's words. Either Omer Rabbi Yishmael or Rabbi Yishmael Emer. Either Rabbi Yishmael says or says Rabbi Yishmael. The distinction is when there's an argument, the Torah puts the person's name first and then what he says. Abaya says this, Rava says this. If he's just the only guy in the conversation, if he's the only one who addresses the subject, then the Torah introduces him with the words, so says Rabbi Yishmael. In other words, he's the only guy who says something on the subject. In this department of the 13 principles of the Torah that we learn before we begin davening, there's only one opinion. So why doesn't it say, says Rabbi Yishmael? Why does it say Rabbi Yishmael says? Question number two. And question number three is, he mentioned 13 principles of Torah, which are all based on the Torah having an order. Don't we know the Torah is not written in chronological order? So who says all these principles are based on something true? So the answer is like this. Just now in this past parsha, we read how Yitzchak and Yishmael went to bury Avram. So it mentions Yitzchak before Yishmael, even though Yishmael is older than Yitzchak. So what does Rashi say? This tells us that Yishmael does teshuva. He honors Yitzchak. He says, Yitzchak, you go in front of me. I know who you are. You're really the true offspring of Avram. You are the one who should go before me. So Rabbi Yishmael says, because Yishmael did teshuva, Jewish people started to name their children Yishmael. Because Yishmael maybe have started off his life not in the best of ways. Maybe Sarah banished him from her home, but eventually he came back. And how do I know he does teshuva? Says Rabbi Yishmael, my name, Yishmael, tells you something. The fact that my mother and father called me Yishmael, and the fact that they weren't the first ones, but this is going on for generations, My name is Shmuel, Oimer. My name is Shmuel tells you something. What does it tell you? It tells you that the Torah has an order. Maybe there is a concept of the Torah not being in order, but the fact that I am called Yishmael indicates that there are certain matters of the Torah which do have an order. And here are the examples of the Torah's order. These are the 13 principles of the Torah that Rabbi Yishmael tells us. All these 13 principles are based upon his name, Yishmael. Because my name is Yishmael, therefore I have a proof for my 13 principles. So Yishmael clearly does teshuvah, and Esav clearly doesn't do teshuvah. That's one difference between them. Lahepach, Fipirish Chazal, Hamuskar Bepirish Rashav Shasenu, who ikav la'acham Esav's kuras Yaakov Maras Machpelah. On the other hand, even further, not only does Esav not do teshuvah, but when Yaakov is buried, Esav delays the burial, and famously, their Jewish people the children of Yaakov trying to figure out what to do. Esav is saying, I have a share in this burial site, you can't bury your father. And everyone is very diplomatic. Like, all right, he has a point, we do have a document, let's go get the document. And they went to go search for the document. Amazingly, Chushim, the son of Dan, who is called Chushim, which means senses, but that name is apparently Saginar. It's apparently the name which indicates that there are no senses, because he was blind and he was deaf, and so Chushim is he's trying to figure out what's going on. I'm not sure exactly if he was blind or maybe he's deaf and mute. I'm not sure if he was blind. Either way, he's what's going on? Who is bothering Zaydi's burial? And they tell him it's Esav somehow. So Esav, he slaps him in the head and he kills Esav. So my Alta Zayda, Rabbi Yisrael Nevler used to say, when he comes to heaven, he's not afraid of any angel accusing him. He was gifted with the oratory skills. I could defend myself from day to tomorrow. I'm just afraid to get a deaf angel. What if we ever get a deaf angel? A deaf angel, I'll be stuck. Anyways, so getting back to Esav, Esav doesn't do teshuvah. Not only does not do teshuvah, even at the funeral of Yaakov, he is there fighting and saying, no, you can't bury your father. Mitzad Sheni. So if we were to compare Esav to Yishmael, who we say is a better guy, who would we have more in common with? We would think we have more in common with Yishmael. Esav doesn't do teshuvah. Mitzad Sheni, on the other hand, Avraham Yatsa Nifrim and Yishmael Lehugdar Yisrael. On the other hand, the Torah says that from Avraham was separated an Ishmael. Yishmael is not called Jewish. He was separate from Avraham. Therefore, he does not inherit Avraham. Although he does teshuvah, he does not inherit anything. As Sarah said before she passed away, she told Avraham, before she banished them from her home, she said, the son of the maidservant will not inherit with my child, with Yitzchak. So Esav, on the other hand, is in a whole different status. Lumazes Esav, although Esav is called different from Isaac, the Torah says from Isaac was separated in Esav. Esav is considered separate and different to Yitzchak. Yet, b'cholzes hu nisha begeder Yisrael mumar v'yerish k'vishenemar Yerushalayim Sarti. He is still considered a Jew, albeit a renegade Jew, and he does inherit together with Yaakov. As it says in the Torah, I have given an inheritance to Esav. So how come we find that Yishmael is better than Esav? Yishmael does teshuvah, yet he's not considered Jewish. Esav doesn't do teshuvah, and yet he is considered a child of Yitzchak, separate, different, but a child nonetheless. And he does not inherit, and he does inherit from Yitzchak. So how does this make sense? A simple answer would be like this. On the surface, who was Ishmael? He was the son of a maidservant of Abraham. So his genealogy, his status, So therefore, he is not considered a equal standing child like Yitzchak, because he's just a child of a maidservant, not the child of the wife of Abraham. But Esau was the child of Rivka. So since Esau is a child of the wife of his father, the wife of Yitzchak, therefore he has different status. That's how we would be able to answer this on a simple level. Next page. There's a big question on this. Akanon thought of the question. Unbelievable question. How can you say this? Who else was children of maidservants? No? Help if I sing the Jeopardy again? Who else was the children of a maidservant?
Yaakov's two...
Yaakov, very good. Yaakov has 4 wives, 2 of them are maidservants, and all the Jewish people come from 2 of the... A lot of the Jewish people come from 2 of the maidservants. And we consider all the children of the maidservants considered absolutely Jewish. And not only that, the Torah says, Vitase Shlema, Yaakov's bed was complete. He was different to Avram and Yitzchak. Avram has a Yishmael, Yitzchak has an Esau, and Yaakov, all the children are complete. So don't tell me that the difference between Yitzchak and Avram is that Yitzchak's child comes from a wife and Avram's child comes from a maidservant. That's why they had this different genealogy and different status, different class. If that was true, then how come all of Yaakov's children are considered his children 100% to the extent the Torah says Yaakov's bed was complete, all the children were perfect. Look in note 17. V'gam, another proof that this answer, that the reason that Yishmael and Esau are different is just because of who their mother was, another proof that that can't be the answer is from the following. Look at note 17. The fact that Sarah had to say, he shall not inherit with my son, with Yitzchak Muchach, it's understood. It's understood that he would have inherited. He is an inheritor. I know that halachically or legally, whatever it is, there is room for him to be an inheritor, and therefore I am stipulating he cannot be inherited. And that's why Avram gave gifts to all of the sons of his concubines, and he sent them away from Yitzchak while he was still alive. Why did he do while still alive? He didn't want to give them a share in the inheritance, and he gave them gifts while he was alive. So there was a clear decision not to include them in the inheritance, but they naturally would have been included. And therefore, we're left back to original question. So why is Yishmael considered to be different to Esau if they're both children of their fathers, and maybe Yishmael comes from a maidservant, but that shouldn't make a difference. Why is Yishmael not considered Jewish and Esau considered Jewish? The question returns to its strength. What is the difference between Yishmael and Esau? And because of this distinction, Esau is considered Jewish and not Yishmael. Despite the fact that only Yishmael does tshuva and not Esau. This indicates that the connection between Esau and Yitzchak is a lot deeper than the connection between Yishmael and Abraham, a connection that's not dependent on tshuva. There's a bond between Yitzchak and Esau that's deeper than the bond between Yishmael and Abraham, despite the fact that externally Yishmael is a lot more in common with Abraham than Esau has with Yitzchak. I heard an incredible story last night. The Alter Rebbe had a non-chassid, who participated in all the farbrengens and all the gatherings of the chassidim. I guess he liked to drink, he liked the herring, whatever it was. And he would not really walk the walk and talk the talk. He was more in the category of Esau in every respect. And the chassidim wanted to know, what should we do with this guy? There was before, there were Chabad centers and Kiruv wasn't popular. What do we do with this guy? He's coming to all the. So the Alter Rebbe said, you cannot imagine the pleasure Hashem has from a Jew doing one sin less. It's a whole different kind of connection. We have no idea what this connection is. One more story here last night, Mary the Kamaisa. I think it was Reb Beryl Baumgarten or Pinchas Baumgarten. I don't remember right now. But there was a member of the community discovered who never had a circumcision. And not only did he have a circumcision, he never had a pidyon ben. He never had the redemption of the firstborn. So he arranged this person, he spoke to him, and he inspired him to get a circumcision. And he sent to the Rebbe the shirayim, the leftovers of the meal, as a gift. As a gift to the Rebbe, here is a leftover of this person had a bris milah, this person had a pidyon ben, we had a meal, here is something from the meal. The Rebbe answered one word with 3 exclamation points. Hech yisani, you revived me. Rabbi Groner said at that time, whatever it means, the Rebbe's mood, so to speak, wasn't whatever that means. It wasn't the Rebbe's usual mood. The Rebbe wasn't responding to people. But this gave the Rebbe incredible nachas ruach. I mean, the nachas ruach Hashem has from his child coming back to him is felt by tzaddikim. So the Rebbe stressed, Hech yisani, you revived me. Anyway, so the connection between a Yishmael and the Yitzchak, a Yishmael and the Esau versus connection between Yishmael and Avram versus connection between an Esau and Yitzchak is something very deep, and that's why Yishmael is considered not Jewish and Esau is considered Jewish. But what exactly is the reason for this distinction? When we see that in their personas, Yishmael had a lot more of a Jewish character than Esau. So we will continue with him tomorrow and find this out. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful Chodesh, and a wonderful Yontif. Sei gesund.